I'll call upon stage Ms.Mita Vashist to enlighten us with the views on women's self-empowerment.
My fellow speakers, it's been a pleasure to listen to all of you and greatly enlightening for me. I don't know how many of you have seen I left the sort of a file of a photo document of the 4 years of work. Anyway, I'll keep it kind of small and short and sweet. In 2000, I was asked by Akshara, which was an NGO, to distribute prizes at a women empowerment thing and to say a few nice words. Now, I'm very nervous about saying nice words to people who have been through a lot of trauma, you know. Ki haan, we love you, we are with you, all that mujhse nahi hota hai. So I said, I was anyway going out of town, so I said, look, I have something better. I'll do a theater workshop with them at some point of time. And in the meantime, you can show them, they were showing the video of Man Ke Manjeere. It's a video I've acted in, which is about a woman who gave up domestic violence, walked out of a domestic violence marriage and drove a truck to earn a living for her and her child. So that was a big hit. That video was you want me to speak for this? It's a big hit. So this person, the organization Let's Breakthrough, which had created it, would show it at all these places. So after some months, Nanditas, there are two Nanditas, Nandita Gandhi and Nandita Shah, they called me and said, Mita, you remember you had promised a theater workshop? And I said, yeah, sure. Are you up to it? I said, sure. So they said, well, will you conduct it? It's for trafficked minors. So I phone pe haan bol diya because I was going through a lot of things in my own life. So I said, yeah, I'll do it. Then on the way to the remand home, a couple of weeks later, it was at 9 in the morning, it was in Devnar. And I said, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm doing this theater workshop for trafficked minors. Now, who are trafficked minors? I hadn't thought of that. It's like, who's a trafficked minor? So I called up Nandita and thank God she picked up the phone and I said, Nandita, what is a trafficked minor? And she says, I said, minor, I understand, below the age of 18. What is trafficked is, what is it? Drugs trafficking, human trafficking, what is it? She says, these are all young kids who have been rescued from the brothels of Bombay and they're all below the age of 18. So what I was in effect doing was, unlike, you know, where I teach at NSD and other places, I was going to actually walk into a room of 40 young girls who had been to the brothels, been pulled out from there, whose bodies, minds, and emotionally they were scarred. And it took me time to understand just how scarred they were. So what started as a one-day workshop, and somehow, I don't know, there's a whole process to it, which I can't go through because it'll be very long. But my 22 years of having studied acting, which is primarily connected to the body, the inner psyche of a human being, that's my subject as an actress. I study that. I study body, I study my own emotions. So we've gone through the whole process. So for some strange reason, through the craft of acting, the actual craft and the science of it, the body of it, I managed to understand what it would mean to deal with these trafficked kids. So I'll cut it short. I'll say there were 4 things I understood to start with about working, you know, getting these kids out of their trauma. The first was the body. Their bodies had already been so abused that from 1 mile away, an outside society person can tell that this girl has been a prostitute. I'm going to use the word prostitute because that is the word used for kids. Nobody sees them as kids. Ye to randi thi, ye to prostitute. And then there's a popular saying ki once a prostitute, always a prostitute. Okay? And even the remand home people believe that. The people who are actually supposed to manage these kids and look after them and put them through a process, they also have, "Arey tum to aise hi ho, to thadak se thappad maar diya," you know. And now those kids have been through so much that their idea to logic, reason, everything is in any case not there because they're actually children. So in the work process, which started as a 2-day thing, became a 7-week workshop and went on for 4 years, was initially just completely passion and you know, personally driven. Then a lot of people started coming into it. Action Aid and the government of India, they all started funding it. But उनके भी एजेंडाज होते हैं, तो थोड़ी देर बाद मुझे उन बच्चों को उन एजेंडा से भी बचाना पड़ा, क्योंकि क्या होता है, the kid comes to a point of rehabilitation then Action Aid will suddenly say, oh, we need so-and-so. Why? Because we need her to stand on that forum and say, I was once a prostitute and now how much I've improved. Okay? So so my work became very unpopular because I would say that no, once a kid has gone through this process, you will not bring her back to say this. And once in Orissa, we had a very interesting workshop where, anyway, I'll go point by point. So there are things that I learned from the kids. I can't go into the work process too much except to say that there were two things I didn't do. The first was I did not lecture them about their lives and how they could improve, and I did not give them sympathy at all. Ki hai bechare, oh, you know, all that sympathy you give to people who've been through trauma. I gave them no sympathy. I did not talk sympathy with them. The second thing is, in all my work, I did not ever work with their recent lives in the brothel. In fact, people would tell me that you're dealing with, you know, prostituted children, you should tell them, let them tell their stories. I said, how is it going to help them? You know what? And I discovered that if you actually work with a child, with their body, then next comes their voice, because the second thing of trauma is the voice goes. So for the body, I worked with martial arts, classical dances, okay? Because a classical dance has a structure. Now a girl who has been so abused in her body, if you tell her do free movement, to do free movement you need to have a very strong, creative, independent base. You don't have that. You are a body that has been sexually abused constantly. So classical dance, because तो उनको तो इतना ऐसा हाथ करने में पहले मुश्किल होता था. दीदी नहीं कर सकते. I got a Bharatanatyam dancer, student to teach them Bharatanatyam dance. So when they had to start getting into mudras and actually deal with their bodies in lines and forms, first of all, it took away the responsibility of them having to address their own bodies directly. This was a dance, they had to do it. It was a classical dance. It demanded a rigor. So by the end of it, they would be sweating, tired, the muscles would ache. Then I introduced martial arts, lathi, akhada. So after 2, 3, 4 weeks, the bodies started transforming, you know. So suddenly, now you see, it's very interesting when they're pushed in a brothel, they're also pushed into frameworks. Like if this is a door, a girl is told to stand like this. Now even in the remand home, because the body has been pushed into that, they'll stand like that, or they'll fight like that, or something like that. So the first thing is that you remove the trauma of the body by putting it into another aesthetic. And I'm going to use the word aesthetic here. Then the voice is lost. If you ask, in the beginning when I would ask them their names, they would just whisper. Kya bola? Kya bola? Thoda aur bolo? Wouldn't happen. So music was brought in, you know, sare, gama, music, folk singing, a lot of these kind of things were brought in to actually open the voice out. And each of things was done in separation. You know, you couldn't do it all together because they had to get hold of their bodies, then their voices, then their minds. Then for the mind, one picked up a comic play, which was written by a Singaporean writer called The Coffin is Too Big for the Hole. So it's a comedy. It's a comedy that deals with police, with bureaucracy, and it's a very funny play about a man whose grandfather died, but before he died, he made a huge coffin because he wanted to be buried in style. So by the time the coffin reaches the graveyard, there's a huge procession. Hey, whose coffin is this? It's a beautiful, huge coffin. But when they get to the graveyard, the grave is too small. So then there's a whole lot of bureaucratic wrangling because the grandson says, make the grave bigger, and the grave digger says, no, I can't, it's a standard sized grave. You only have to have a standard sized coffin. So you see, the whole idea of standardization, of making things uniform, got introduced into their psyche. Now through the play, they actually understood 10,000 new words. They got a whole, you know, new set of debates and arguments, and all the intellectual rigor that lecturing and all doesn't work. They got it through doing a 30-minute comedy, which had very good language, very powerful ideas of bureaucracy and other things. And then when the time came for the play performance, which was the first time about 3 months later, I had a drama school student who I had taught in drama school, so he had come as assistant. And I would push the girls and I said, no, you have to get this right. So martial arts, Ghana, ye movement, play ka, sab theek se karo. So this boy said to me, and we were going to get an audience, the bureaucrats were coming and others, and this boy said to me, he said, ma'am, why are you pushing them so much? Nobody is going to expect so much from them. So it's okay. I said, no, that is precisely why they cannot just be okay. That is precisely why I'm pushing them, because people are coming with the idea of sympathy. Bichare, poor things, they've been trafficked, they are young prostitutes now trying to be redeemed. Let's give them our sympathy, let's give them our attention, we've come from all over, let's give them this much, and that's good enough. But I said, I want them to stun the audience, I want the audience to say, is this person ever prostituted? I can't believe it. Because you see, in the arts, what is great is that whoever is standing on a stage here and there, the audience there, you end up being elevated as a performer. If I stand here, I hope I can, actually, and perform to you, then I'm already in a position of power. And if I can change the way you see me as a human being, then I have achieved an empowerment for these people, So that was very important. The problem is not about the kids. There are, as it is I've discovered in the remand homes and government homes, there are no actual self-empowerment schemes. They are about tailoring and knitting and stitching and all that sort of thing. But to teach a kid how to negotiate with the world outside. Sanitary napkins were not available for children. I was just telling Mr. Murugan, I wish I had known you then, because they didn't have good clothes. They would get body rashes because people donate nylon clothes. Now, when the lectures happen in remand homes, they'll come and they'll lecture to the kids about AIDS and HIV and how to use a condom. So I'm like, I listen to all that, I'm saying, why are you telling these young kids how to use a condom? Are you suggesting that they will go back into prostitution? Or what? I said, these are young children, you have to talk to them about hygiene, how to keep, how to deal with your clothes, your nails, your hair, those kind of things. Why are you lecturing them about HIV and AIDS? So the thing with a trafficked person is somebody who's been once labeled a prostitute is that it's a label that is worse than a tattoo. It will not go off. And the people who won't allow it to go off is not the kids themselves. It is the outside society. It is us. We find it very difficult. So when the first performance happened, the theater performance, the audience was completely shocked. We have it on the video where they're actually shaking hands. The audience is coming up, shaking hands, talking to them like you do to any other actor after a show. So this was the way the first triumph happened, and then I'll quickly tell you where it all went. Over the next 3 years, the kids performed at the Bharat Mahotsav International Theatre Festival in Delhi, where theatre groups had come from all over the world. And these kids were the only trafficked kids. It wasn't a festival for trafficked people or some such thing. Their performance was so good that the NSD director came, saw the play and said, can it be performed at the Mahotsav? Sure. So they went there. Now, they knew that, acha, ye ladkiyan shayad mane brothel se hain. But once they saw them on stage, the idea that I have a knowledge about you and what I'm receiving from you, talmel, they did not match. So the arts took them to this kind. Now, the other thing I realized also was the thing I learned about my country was from these kids. One thing I learned was that parents do not sell the child. It's a misconception, and it's very convenient to the government to feel that way because, अरे माँ बाप ने बेचा है तो हम क्या करें उसमें, अब माँ बाप नहीं बेचते हैं, क्या बेचते? How does a child get into trouble? I've noticed one more thing. It is always the oldest child in the family who ends up getting trafficked. Trafficked people are the rural and the poor. A street kid in Bombay will not end up in a brothel in Bombay. But a kid from Bengal, Karnataka, Central India, these are the kids who end up in the brothels. The street kids of Bombay are smart. They're survivors. So I also realized that there is a huge knowledge gap in the rural and the urban in this country. and there is nothing to fill up that gap at all. So most of these children were farmers' daughters, and they were the oldest child. Now, kya hota hai? All of us who are the oldest child, I'm an older child, so what happens is, when you are at the age of 12, 13, if there is anything that is going wrong in your family, like your parents are fighting, or the fathers are drunk, or there's not enough money in the house, the oldest child is the first one to take up the responsibility of getting angry, leaving home. How many of you have left home in anger at the age of 13? Or wanted to? Right? You're all laughing, so I figure it figures on almost everybody's age. Age of 13, I hate my parents, I'm getting out, I'll go and live there, earn my own living. It's a very natural reaction, and children of that age have a very strong sense of self-respect. Whether it's a poor child or, and children are, if they don't, they're not, you know, if you see the kids on the street playing with a rubber thing, they're just happy. Just happy. So children are children, their sense of self-respect, whether they are born in a slum or not, is very high at that age. Very, very high. So the slightest sort of assaults to that self-respect, like one of the kids, will make them leave home. Now, the minute they leave home, the traffickers are waiting outside. And there is always a reason. Every single traffic child's story is different. Somebody was told you will get a job in the kitchen. The kitchen actually happened to be in the brothel. Somebody was told you will get a job, you know, with so-and-so over there, and the stories are numerous. There wasn't a single story that was identical about how this kid landed up in the brothel, you know. So anyway, through the arts, I discovered that the arts are very democratic. They can touch, they can bring out everything in you without you having to go into a personal trauma space. So in a manner of speaking, they heal the wound without uncovering it. Yeah, so the kids performed at the Bharat Rang Mahotsav. They also became part of the National Institute of Fashion Technology, Delhi, where I was to do a workshop. So I told them I'm working with the kids. They said, oh, but Mita, we really want you to do a workshop with us. So I said, okay, let's do one thing. Let's combine the class. So I'm going to get 15 remand home marginalized kids with me, and they're going to be part of the class, and they will be part of the fashion designing class. They will sit and they'll listen. And I'll tell you, it was a hilarious incident. That year I was working with the fashion designing students on the concept of water. I said, think of water as what is going to come into design. So we were working with ideas of Midya, the play, the woman who destroys, and Narmada, the river, which destroys. So the two kinds of feminine which destroy. So I'm telling the fashion designing students that water has many qualities. You know, it can, in the sunlight, it can become red, it can become yellow, it can become white, depending on what it reflects. And then there were animal things. So this is all art stuff. Then the kids went out to the market. They had to get pieces of fabric with which the final production would be designed. So the fashion designing kids went, and then they came back. And then they showed me. For water, everybody had picked up blue satin and white satin. And for the costume, which was meant for the monkey, somebody had picked up a dirty brown and brought it. So my kids are sitting here, and they're quiet. So I said, why do you wear just blue? So they said, ma'am, the color of water is blue. White, it's okay. So then I looked at these kids, and they were like waiting to jump in. So I said, हाँ, तो बोलो मुमू क्या? अरे दीदी ये क्या लाया? आप बोलो ना, पानी का कितना रंग होता है? लाल भी होता है, पीला भी होता है. तो भैया आप लाल भी तो ला सकते थे, आप नीला भी तो ला सकते थे, आप 3 तरह का हरा ला सकते थे. You could have got different kinds of colors. Then another girl said, and bhaiya, for that monkey's thing, you could have got that codridge, you know, because the monkey has soft fur. Codridge. I said corduroy. So these kids are every kid who's in the brothel of Bombay is a farmer's or a craftsperson daughter from the rural poor of this country. And their sense of aesthetics is very high. This is what I learned. Their sense of music, dance, craft, working with colors and paints is phenomenal. They put a city kid to shame. And people say, how is that possible? Then I say, अच्छा भैया, आप जो कांजीवरम साड़ी पहनते हैं वो कहाँ से आती है? From the rural. आपका आयुर्वेदिक मेडिसिन कहाँ से आया? it is connected to, all of these things of Kanjivaram sarees, your Varli painting, everything that India earns its foreign exchange on. And we are very proud of our cultural heritage. Sorry folks, but that entire cultural heritage is not an urban thing. It completely belongs to those other areas of our country. And these kids have grown up in that soil, and then they have found their way into a place in a large metropolis where there is obviously a demand, therefore there is a supply. Why are kids not trafficked into, say, I don't know, Raipur or something? You know, the biggest brothels are in Bombay, Calcutta, Delhi. So who are the customers? It is not the urban. It is it's not the rural, it's the urban. And of course, there is a whole bunch of people out there from the rural who know that I can sell this kid for a premium, you know. But when we're dealing with rehabilitation processes, there's a lot to understand that these children are actually come from a background of high level of aesthetics, of performing arts, of crafting arts, of painting, of music, of dance. It's in their blood much more than in an urban kid's blood. So in that sense, my ability to use theater, purely theater, and the performing arts and the visual arts was very simple in the whole process of utilizing it to work with these particular kids. To cut the story short, there's a lot of drama that also happened because it's not easy. They don't like it if, like one of the akkas at the remand home, a lot of things changed in the remand home. We even built an outdoor stage. But once our actual talking processes would happen between work. And I remember one moment I was really proud of my kids, I call them my kids, is when a new kid had come in to the remand home, and she kept following me around saying, Didi, meri kahani, because they want to tell you a sob story. They've been conditioned by that. They've been made to meet too many psychologists, too many social workers who will say, apni kahani batao. So the kids are very smart. They look at you and say, acha, this is the story this one wants. So if you say, ki tumhe bahut takleef hui, haan, bahut takleef hua. Okay, so they'll give you the story you want, but the actual story comes out 3 years later, when you are not even ever asking for the story. So one of the best things about the kids was that the older group that I had worked with for 2 years, when a new group came in and they would follow around and say, Didi, aapse kuch kehna hai. So one of them turned to her and said, don't give her a sob story. She's not going to be interested. The only way to get her approval is to do the work. So one of my older students told that to this fresh young kid who had come in. And that was fantastic for me. That was a sense of achievement, in the sense to know that, okay, these kids have understood that the only way this whole process is going to work is through their own empowerment, and it has nothing to do with us exchanging stories about, personal stories. Anyway, I don't know how to put it all in this thing, but it's 4 years of work. A lot of the things that everybody said here are things totally experienced there, and it was wonderful. What is lovely about all the sessions that we've heard is that these great stories are all stories born of creativity, of thinking out of the box. The sanitary pad thing, the banking thing, everything is being done. Like he said, the problem is the solution, really, and it's all out of the box. So I had no experience of working with traffic minors. I did not have a degree in sociology. Psychology was not one of my subjects ever. Even in BA, it wasn't. But drama was, and drama for me is life. It encompasses every branch of learning, social, psychological, whatever. And what I knew is what I took there, So I didn't read up on other people's ideas of how to work with traffic minors. I just saw a human being in front of me. The way I would teach a drama class is how I taught these kids. And that is exactly how they responded. So after 3 years, we actually had the group one. Yeah, we also gave them scholarships and things like that when the money started coming in. But we had group one that became teachers. So they would go to Nasik and I wouldn't go at all. And they would conduct the whole workshop process, direct the play and everything with a new group. And coming to the end of it, I had 3 kids. One was Kannada, one was Bengali, and one was Bengali, Kannada, and I think Tamilian, one of them. So these 3 kids, we had come to a point where I sent them to the NCPA library because I said, you're going to go into your own regions and if you could start this work there. So find a script in your own language, some story of your own language and bring it to me and let's see it. So you won't believe what these kids came back with. The Bengali kid came back and said, Didi, this is one text I liked very much and I think it'll work. So I said, what is it? It's called Gopi Gayan Bhagavan. That is a Satyajit Ray's text. The other one had picked up Girish Karnar's Nagamandalam. Okay, and she did not know that these are classic writers. Their sense of aesthetic is so high, I tell you, in our entire rural, kids. It's so amazing that they had actually picked up the best works which we are taught in drama school. These are the best works. They had intuitively picked those up, read those and picked those up. Anyway, some of them today are married with children. They learned English, they learned computers, they went to work one of them was actually doing stock taking in a factory. And then her colleague fell in love with her. And they're married. I mean, of course, a lot of them don't know that this kid has ever been in a brothel. And at the moment, I don't think as a society we are ready for that. The problem is not with them, the problem is with us. Okay? So I remember I've written a script, actually a film script I have, which I was raising funding for some years ago. And there was this American producer sitting there, and he said, well, Mita, this might be a big deal out here, but it's not a big deal in the West out there. So I said, what's not a big deal? Oh, we're okay with traffic people. So I said, are you really? I said, no, everybody's okay with traffic people as long as that person has nothing to do with you. Oh, no, I don't buy that. I said, okay, you have a girlfriend? Yeah, I do. I said, how long you've known her? Oh, we've been together 5 years. I said, did you ever ask her if, she's been trafficked? No. I said, well, suppose she has, and she spent a stint in the brothel, how would you deal with it? No, I mean, well, I don't mind, but if she could have just told me before we got together. So I said, well, she might have had mumps and measles and, irregular periods before you got together, and maybe broken her leg also when she was a kid. And she never told you about that. Yeah, well, that's different. So I said, well, then if this is different, then you have a problem. Then we are not ready to accept traffic people until we have blessed them from our sides. Okay? So this, to me, the 2 things I got out of this is that the change needs to come in us, all of us. The kids are very ambitious. Once they have understood themselves, the kind of jobs they wanted? They wanted to go into the police. They wanted to join the army. They said, we have so much experience, can't we join the border security force so that we can prevent other kids from being trafficked? So I actually tried telling the remand home and other educational NGOs that can you somehow organize for these kids to enter the services? And no, they need to have passed class 10. So I said, well, you're an educational organization, can you just train them to pass class 10, give the exam and give the exam for the police? Mita, they're not interested. I said, these kids are. So because this was a one-person effort with a lot of people who came in later, it became tough, and at some point of time, my entire emotional, financial resources were over, but I had finally understood the infrastructure of how I could actually put it together if I was to do it again. The 2 great triumphs that happened was, so the kids are ambitious, they don't want chota-mota things. They've been through a lot. Mostly people try and give them safe things, ki thoda knitting kar lo, thoda ye kar lo, thoda nursing mein laga denge job. But once they've been through the theatre arts process, they wanted the world. They wanted to be out there. They wanted it big. They wanted to be in the police. They wanted to be in the army. And we couldn't give it to them because we have our own stuff happening, you know. The sweetest was when initially I asked one of the kids to sing a song and just reminded me. She actually said, she sang Jana Gana Mana, and they sang, some of the Bengali kids sang the Tagore songs. Okay? So then you realize, oh my God, these are school kids who've been up to class 4 and 5 and 6. And the other reason I discovered why a lot of makeup is put in brothels is because it helps to disguise the age of the child. Because a decent regular man with some amount of sexual drive who goes to a brothel, if he's a decent guy, will actually not be able to handle a little kid as what he's going to pay for. So that's why they're made up, and you know, so yeah, well, there are lots of things. The kids are still there. We're still in touch with each other even after these 7-8 years. What really saddened me and killed me was 2 years ago, I got a phone call from Devnar Remand Home, and it was a girl, and she said, "Ye Meeta madam ka number hai kya?" So मैंने कहा हाँ, yes, it's my number. She's saying, you did something called theater. I said theater, हाँ. You did it many years ago over here? So I said yes. She said, I'm here, can you come back and do it? I've just come here, can you come back and do it? So somewhere it had changed a lot of things. I sometimes still get phone calls from kids who say, you don't remember me? I said, no, but I kind of know the voice. Because there were about 200 kids who had gone through the workshops. 15 had stayed for 4 years, 15, 20 of them, but a whole lot had happened. And then she says, I just wanted to tell you that I'm very happy and I'm settled. You know, and none of those kids went back to the brothel, none of them. You know? So the arts is a self-empowerment process which is so personal that the change is, once you have figured that out, nobody can mess with you after that. So I've told this all in a very brief sort of a way. There are lots of other things, but if there are any questions, please ask. And I know it's time for our guests to leave also. Okay, that's it.